I've been on the road for hours, trying to hitch a ride to the next town. It was getting dark, and my feet were sore. I just needed someone to give me a lift, someone kind enough to help out a stranger. Finally, a car pulled over, and the driver offered me a ride. I was relieved, grateful to get off my feet. He seemed friendly enough, middle-aged guy, graying hair, and a reassuring smile. I hopped in, thanking him profusely. But as the car moved forward, something felt off. The atmosphere shifted, and his smile turned into this unsettling grin. I tried to brush it off, thinking I was just being paranoid, but his eyes seemed to linger a bit too long on me. I felt this knot in my stomach, this instinctual feeling that something wasn't right. I asked him about the route, trying to make small talk to ease the tension, but his responses were vague, almost evasive. It was like he was avoiding the conversation, his focus solely on the road ahead. As we drove on, I noticed he took a different turn, away from the main road. I felt this surge of panic, this realization that something was amiss. I asked him where we were going, but he just chuckled, this eerie laugh that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't friendly, it was chilling, almost menacing. My heart raced. I wanted to get out, but we were in the middle of nowhere. I felt trapped, this overwhelming fear engulfing me. I glanced around, noticing there were no other cars on the road, no signs of civilization. It was just us, and I felt this sense of impending danger. Then, he started talking, his words sending a chill down my spine. He spoke about things that made my blood run cold, things that no ordinary person should know or say. I tried to keep calm, to not let him see my fear, but inside, I was panicking. His intentions were becoming clearer, and they were far from innocent. I pleaded with him to stop the car, to let me out, but he just laughed, this malicious grin plastered on his face. It was like he enjoyed my terror, reveling in my helplessness. I knew I had to act fast, to find a way out of this nightmare. I searched for something, anything I could use to defend myself, but the car was empty, devoid of anything useful. Then, I saw an opportunity, a brief moment when he slowed down at a junction. I flung the door open, not caring about the consequences, and bolted out, running for my life. I could hear him yelling behind me, cursing, but I didn't stop. I ran as fast as I could, adrenaline pumping, heart pounding against my chest. I kept running until I saw lights in the distance, a small diner by the road. I stumbled inside, gasping for air, trying to explain what happened. The people there called the police, and I stayed until they arrived. I gave them a description of the man and the car, but I couldn't shake off the terror, the feeling of being hunted. It was a night of sheer horror, a night that made me question the kindness of strangers. I've been driving for hours, and the gas gauge was almost on empty. The road was desolate, no signs of civilization in sight. Then, in the distance, I saw a flickering light, a gas station tucked away in the darkness. I pulled in, relieved to find a place to refuel. The station seemed abandoned, eerie in its isolation. I hesitated for a moment before stepping out of the car. As I approached the pump, I noticed someone inside the station. The attendant, a tall, gaunt man with hollow eyes, stared at me through the dusty window. His gaze made me uneasy, but I brushed it off as tiredness playing tricks on my mind. I greeted him as I filled up, trying to be friendly, but he didn't respond, just continued staring. His silence felt oppressive, suffocating almost. I finished pumping gas and went inside to pay. The atmosphere changed the moment I stepped through the door. It was freezing inside, colder than it should have been, sending a chill down my spine. The attendant stood behind the counter, still staring, his expression unnerving. I tried to engage in small talk, asking about the area, but he remained silent, his eyes fixated on me. I felt this growing sense of unease, this feeling that something wasn't right. I handed him the money, eager to leave, but he didn't take it. He just kept staring, this blank, unsettling stare. I tried to make a joke to ease the tension, but he didn't react, didn't blink. It was like he was in a trance, this eerie stillness about him. I took a step back, my heart pounding, trying to find the door. But then, he spoke, this hoarse whisper that sent shivers down my spine. He said something about being trapped, about needing help. I didn't know what to do, didn't know how to react. It felt surreal, this situation growing more unsettling by the second. I tried to leave, to get out of there, but the door wouldn't budge. It was like it was stuck, like I was trapped in that eerie gas station with that unsettling attendant. I turned back, and he was closer, too close for comfort. His eyes were pleading, but there was something sinister behind them. I asked him what was wrong, but his words were jumbled, incomprehensible. He kept repeating the same phrases, this desperate plea for help. I felt this overwhelming sense of dread, this fear that gripped me tight. I needed to leave, to escape that gas station, but I couldn't find a way out. Then, suddenly, the lights flickered, and everything went dark. I could hear shuffling, movement around me, but I couldn't see anything. I fumbled for my phone, trying to use its flashlight, but it wouldn't turn on. I was engulfed in darkness, this suffocating blackness that paralyzed me with fear. I called out, yelling for someone, anyone, but there was no response. It was like I was alone in that dark void. Then, the lights flickered back on, and the attendant was gone. I stumbled out, gasping for air, my heart racing. I got back in my car, shaking uncontrollably, and drove off as fast as I could. I couldn't shake off the terror, the chilling scenario I had just escaped. I was driving late at night, and the road was empty, just me and the dark highway. Then, I saw it, a flickering light up ahead, like a distress signal. Instinctively, I slowed down and pulled over. There was a car on the side of the road, hazard lights blinking. I got out to help, thinking someone might need assistance. As I approached, I noticed two people huddled by the car, a man and a woman. They looked distressed, asking for help. They seemed genuine, scared even. I tried to see what was wrong with their car, but before I knew it, I was ambushed. 3 more people emerged from the shadows, surrounding me. I felt this sinking feeling, this realization that I had walked right into a trap. They were menacing, aggressive, demanding my keys and wallet. I was outnumbered, their faces hidden in the darkness, their voices filled with malice. I tried to reason with them, to explain that I was just trying to help, but they weren't interested. They had this dangerous look in their eyes, this hunger for something more than just my belongings. I tried to flee, but they were too fast, too aggressive. They cornered me, and I felt this overwhelming sense of fear, this helplessness that paralyzed me. They took everything, my wallet, my phone, even my car. But that wasn't enough. They wanted more, something darker, something sinister. I begged them to let me go, to not hurt me, but they just laughed, this cruel laughter that echoed in the night. They had this twisted pleasure in my fear, in my vulnerability. I thought about fighting back, but they were armed, their intentions clear. I didn't stand a chance against them. They tied me up, leaving me by the roadside, alone in the darkness. I could hear their laughter fade as they drove off in my car, leaving me stranded, helpless. I struggled against the restraints, desperate to free myself, but it was futile. I was alone, exposed to the elements, with no way to call for help. Hours passed, and I felt this creeping sense of dread, this fear of what might happen next. I didn't know if they were coming back, if they had left me there to perish. I heard distant sounds, maybe cars passing by, but no one stopped. I tried to shout, to signal for help, but my voice was lost in the fastness of the night. I was cold, scared, and exhausted. The hours felt like an eternity, each minute dragging on with this looming sense of danger. Eventually, a passing car stopped, and a good Samaritan found me. They untied me and called the authorities. I was safe, but the terror of that night lingered. It was a nightmare, a chilling encounter that shattered my sense of trust, leaving me haunted by the cruelty of those malicious individuals. I was driving down the quiet country road when I noticed a commotion up ahead. Brake lights flashed, cars lined up, and people gathered around a seemingly fresh accident. Instinctively, I pulled over to see if anyone needed help. As I approached, I saw the wreckage, 2 cars mangled, glass scattered across the asphalt. People were talking in hushed tones, their faces pale. I offered to help, asking if anyone was hurt. A woman nearby mentioned that the police were on their way, but something about the scene felt off. There was this tension in the air, this unease that I couldn't shake. I decided to look around, to see if there was anything I could do. As I walked closer to the wreckage, I noticed odd details, scratch marks on the road, broken branches, and an eerie silence that hung over the scene. One of the drivers, a man in shock, muttered something about the other car swerving, but it didn't make sense. The road seemed clear, no reason for a sudden swerve. Then, I heard murmurs among the bystanders, whispers about strange sightings before the accident. Some mentioned seeing unusual lights in the sky, others spoke of a sudden blackout that lasted mere seconds. I walked around the cars, inspecting the damage, and that's when I found it, a peculiar object lying by the side of the road. It looked like a metallic shard, something out of place amidst the wreckage. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked it up. As soon as I did, this chill ran down my spine, this inexplicable feeling of discomfort. I tried to shake it off, but things started getting weirder. People around me seemed on edge, casting nervous glances at each other. Someone mentioned seeing figures in the woods, dark silhouettes that vanished when looked upon. I felt this growing sense of dread, this fear that something wasn't right, that the accident wasn't just a random event. As I stood there, a sudden cold gust of wind swept through, and the atmosphere changed. The air felt heavy, charged with an unsettling energy. I looked around, and that's when I noticed it, the trees rustling in an eerie pattern, almost as if they were responding to something. It felt surreal, like nature itself was disturbed by whatever had transpired. The metallic shard I found seemed to pulsate in my hand, emitting this low, almost inaudible hum. It was unnerving, this sensation that something sinister was at play. I tried to put the shard down, to let it go, but it seemed to cling to my hand. It was like it had a grip on me, refusing to let go. Then, a sudden noise, a crackling sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It was deafening, this cacophony of noise that drowned out everything else. People started panicking, yelling, trying to flee the scene. But I felt rooted to the spot, unable to move, trapped in this nightmare. The shard in my hand grew warmer, almost burning. I wanted to drop it, to get away from whatever was happening, but I couldn't. And then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. The noise ceased, the wind calmed, and the shard slipped from my hand, falling to the ground with a metallic clatter. I stumbled back, shaken to the core, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The accident site was now eerily quiet, the bystanders gone, leaving behind an unsettling stillness. It was a gloomy afternoon when I drove along the desolate highway. I noticed a vehicle parked by the roadside, abandoned and eerily quiet. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to stop, thinking someone might need help. As I approached the vehicle, an unsettling feeling crept over me. The car was in shambles, windows shattered, doors ajar. It looked like it had been through a violent struggle. I cautiously peered inside, and that's when I saw it, bloodstains smeared on the seats and belongings strewn across the cabin. Panic started to rise within me as I realized something terrible had happened here. I looked around for any signs of life, but the area was desolate, not a soul in sight. The silence felt suffocating, like the air was thick with dread. My mind raced with questions. What had happened to the occupants of this vehicle? Why had they left everything behind? I noticed a piece of torn clothing caught on a nearby branch. It was torn, stained, and shredded, as if someone had struggled to break free. The more I investigated, the more disturbing clues I found. Personal belongings scattered on the ground, a wallet, a cell phone, but no sign of the owner. As I continued searching, a sense of foreboding engulfed me. It felt like I was being watched, as if someone or something was lurking nearby. I tried to call for help using my phone, but there was no signal. Panic started to set in, and I felt this overwhelming urge to flee, but I couldn't leave without understanding what had happened here. Suddenly, a noise from the surrounding woods made me jump. It sounded like footsteps, branches rustling. My heart raced, and I felt this chill down my spine. I looked around frantically, trying to spot any movement, but there was nothing. Just an empty road and a deserted vehicle, whispering the secrets of an ominous event. The shadows seemed to grow longer, the silence deafening. Fear consumed me, and I knew I needed to leave, but something held me back. Then, a voice, a faint cry for help that pierced through the silence. I froze, unsure of what to do. Should I investigate, or should I run? My instincts told me to flee, but the plea for help tugged at my conscience. I cautiously moved towards the source of the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached the edge of the woods and saw a figure lying on the ground, barely conscious. It was a woman, wounded and disoriented. She begged for help, her voice trembling with fear. I rushed to her side, trying to offer assistance, but she was incoherent, unable to explain what had happened. She kept muttering about shadows and voices, about being chased by something she couldn't see. I helped her to her feet, trying to guide her away from the eerie scene. But as we moved, the feeling of being watched intensified. It was like something was lurking in the darkness, stalking us. We hurried away from the abandoned vehicle, adrenaline pushing us forward. The woman's words echoed in my mind, the terror in her voice, the sense of something malevolent lurking in the shadows. We eventually reached a safe distance, and I called for help, describing the unsettling events that had transpired. But even after we were rescued, the memory of that deserted vehicle and the chilling mystery it held stayed with me. As I rounded a bend, I saw it, a makeshift roadblock up ahead, barriers constructed from debris and old barrels. Figures stood there, silhouetted against my headlights. They didn't move, just stood there, blocking the road. I slowed down, expecting them to clear the way, but they didn't budge. My heart started to race as I saw them, their faces obscured, clad in dark clothes, giving off this unsettling vibe. I rolled down my window, hoping to reason with them, to ask why they were blocking the road. But as I got closer, a chill ran down my spine. There was something off about them, something that made me want to turn around and never look back. They didn't speak, didn't make a sound. Just stood there, motionless. Panic started to claw at me, this primal instinct screaming danger. I tried to reverse, to find another way, but more figures emerged from the shadows, surrounding my car. Fear seized me, and I felt trapped, like prey in a predator's grip. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. What did they want? Why were they doing this? I attempted to reason with them again, to plead, but it was as if they were devoid of any emotion, any humanity. Their silence was deafening, their stillness unnerving. I glanced at my phone, hoping for signal, but there was nothing. The isolation of the road left me stranded, at the mercy of these unsettling figures. I honked the horn, hoping to draw attention, but it had no effect. They just stood there, their presence suffocating. Minutes passed, feeling like hours, as I sat there, trapped in this nightmare. I contemplated getting out of the car, running for help, but the thought of facing those figures on foot froze me in terror. Suddenly, one of them moved, a slow, deliberate step towards my car. I couldn't make out their face, but the intent in their movement was unmistakable. Panic surged through me, and I hastily locked the doors, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt like a prey, cornered by an unknown predator, unable to escape. Fear gnawed at me, and the night seemed to close in, suffocating and unrelenting. I desperately searched for a way out, but there was none. They encircled my car, their figures casting long, menacing shadows in the darkness. I considered abandoning my car, making a run for it, but the thought of leaving the safety of the vehicle paralyzed me with fear. I felt helpless, like a trapped animal, waiting for the inevitable. Time stretched on, and their silent standoff continued, the tension thickening with each passing moment. It felt like a cruel game, their silent intimidation a terrifying display of power. Then, as suddenly as it began, they started to retreat, melting back into the shadows. I dared not move until they were out of sight, then quickly reversed and sped away, the memory of their chilling silence haunting me long after I left that dark, desolate road behind. I saw flickering lights ahead, orange cones, and signs indicating roadwork. I figured it was just a typical construction zone. As I approached, I noticed something odd. It was the dead of night, way past working hours, yet there they were, a road crew, hard at work. It struck me as peculiar, but I shrugged it off, thinking maybe they had a deadline to meet. The crew members wore reflective vests and hard hats, their faces hidden in the shadows. I slowed down, expecting them to move aside, but they didn't. They just kept working, almost robotic in their movements. I honked, hoping to catch their attention, but they remained unfazed. It was as if they didn't even hear me. I felt this growing unease in the pit of my stomach, a sense that something wasn't right. I rolled down my window, intending to ask why they were working at this hour, but as I got closer, a shiver ran down my spine. Their faces were obscured, hidden by the darkness or something else. It was impossible to make out any features. I contemplated turning around, finding another route, but something held me back. I felt this sense of foreboding, this pull to understand what was happening. I inched my car forward, trying to maneuver around the crew, but they moved in unison, blocking my path. Panic started to grip me, the situation becoming more unsettling by the second. I reached for my phone, intending to call for help or record the scene, but it was dead, no signal, no battery. The isolation of the road felt suffocating, and I realized I was completely at their mercy. I tried to reason with them, shouting, asking them to move, but they remained silent, their movements methodical and unresponsive. That's when I noticed it. Their tools, the shovels and equipment they used, they weren't real. They looked like props, plastic and fake. It didn't make any sense. My heart raced, and I felt this creeping sense of dread. I needed to get out of there, away from these unsettling figures that seemed almost otherworldly. I attempted to reverse, to flee, but my car wouldn't budge. It was as if I was trapped, locked in by an invisible force. The crew kept working, their movements becoming more synchronized, almost inhuman. The sound of their tools hitting the ground echoed in the night, amplifying the tension. I was engulfed in fear, unsure of what to do. The situation felt surreal, like a nightmare playing out before my eyes. Then, one of them slowly turned towards me, their head tilting in an unnatural angle. I couldn't see their face, but I could feel their gaze piercing through me, sending shivers down my spine. The air felt heavy, suffocating. I felt this impending doom, this overwhelming sense of danger. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. I closed my eyes, gripping the steering wheel, praying for it to end, for them to disappear. When I finally opened my eyes, they were gone, vanished into thin air, leaving behind an empty road and an unsettling memory that would haunt me for nights to come. The night was unusually dark, and my friends and I were driving back from a long road trip. We decided to take a break at a rest stop, just to stretch our legs and grab a quick snack. The place looked deserted, just a few dimly lit lampposts casting eerie shadows. As we pulled into the lot, there was this uncanny silence, an unsettling absence of any noise. I attributed it to the late hour, thinking everyone must be asleep. But there was something about that silence that sent a chill down my spine. We stepped out of the car, and that's when I noticed it. The atmosphere felt off, heavy with an unspoken dread. The usual bustle of a rest stop was missing. No chatter, no cars coming and going, just this unsettling stillness. We walked towards the vending machines, hoping to find something to snack on, but they were empty. Not a single snack left, not even a packet of chips. It felt odd, as if the place was abandoned in a hurry. My friend pointed out a small building nearby, probably the restroom. We hesitated but decided to check it out. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. The flickering lights made the place seem almost haunting. The restroom was in shambles, the stalls were broken, and the sinks were stained. It looked like it hadn't been cleaned in ages. The air was musty, with a hint of something rotten. We decided to leave, the atmosphere too unnerving to linger. As we made our way back to the car, we noticed a figure standing at the edge of the lot, just beyond the reach of the lamplight. It was unnaturally still, almost blending into the darkness. I couldn't make out any features, just this ominous silhouette. We hurriedly got into the car, trying to shake off the unease creeping over us. But then the headlights flickered, and the engine sputtered. Panic set in as the car wouldn't start. It was as if something sinister was at play. My friend tried the radio, hoping to hear some music, something to break the eerie silence. But all we got was static, a harsh, grating sound that seemed to amplify the sense of impending doom. That figure we had seen earlier, it was closer now, just beyond the edge of the light. I could feel this growing sense of dread, a knot forming in my stomach. I wanted to leave, to get away from this place, but the car remained stubbornly still. We tried to call for help, but our phones had no signal, no bars whatsoever. The isolation of the rest stop felt suffocating, like we were trapped in a nightmare. Then, the figure started moving towards us, slow, deliberate steps. My heart raced as I realized we were in danger. There was something about its movement, this unhurried, calculated approach that sent shivers down my spine. We were trapped, sitting ducks in a deserted rest stop in the dead of night. Fear washed over us, and time seemed to stretch endlessly. We locked the doors, but that figure, it didn't seem affected. It kept getting closer, its features still hidden in the shadows. My mind raced, trying to rationalize the situation, to find a way out of this nightmare. Suddenly, the figure stopped, just inches away from the car. I could feel its presence, this oppressive force looming over us. It was as if it was studying us, observing our fear. I wanted to scream, to break free from this paralysis gripping me, but fear rendered me speechless. My friends were just as petrified, silent, and wide-eyed. And then, the figure turned and vanished into the darkness. The car started, the engine roaring to life. We wasted no time, speeding away from that rest stop. It was getting late, and I was driving through this remote stretch of road right, miles away from any town. My car started acting up, making weird noises, and then it just stalled. Panic gripped me. I pulled over to the side, trying to figure out what was wrong, but I had no luck. I checked my phone for a signal, hoping to call for roadside assistance, but there was no service. It was just me, stranded in the middle of nowhere. That's when I saw it, a faint light in the distance, a small garage or workshop maybe. I walked towards it, hoping to find someone who could help fix my car. As I approached, I noticed a lone figure hunched over an engine, tinkering away. I called out, asking for help, and the figure turned around. It was an old man, his face weathered and worn. I explained my situation, hoping he could take a look at my car. He nodded silently and gestured for me to follow him. The garage was dimly lit, tools scattered around, grease and oil stains on the floor. The old man barely spoke, just grunted in acknowledgement. I felt a bit uneasy, but I needed help. He lifted the hood of my car, peering inside, muttering to himself. I stood there, feeling this growing sense of unease, watching his every move. He mentioned some issues with the engine, and I asked how long it would take to fix. He didn't answer, just kept tinkering away. Minutes turned into an hour, and my anxiety started to rise. I asked again if it would take much longer, but he remained silent. I realized the workshop was eerily quiet, too quiet. No other sounds except the occasional clanking of tools. The old man's demeanor was becoming increasingly unsettling, his movements almost erratic. I tried to make small talk, asking about the area, anything to break the silence, but he just ignored me. His gaze was intense, almost piercing, and I felt this growing sense of dread creeping up on me. I took a step back, contemplating leaving, but then I heard the door lock click. Panic surged through me. I tried to open it, but it was stuck, as if something was blocking it from the outside. I demanded he unlock the door, but he didn't respond. Instead, he turned around, and there was this look in his eyes, something sinister that made my blood run cold. Fear gripped me as I realized I might be in danger. I frantically searched for another way out, but all the windows were barred, no escape route in sight. I felt trapped, this sense of helplessness consuming me. The old man's actions became more aggressive, his movements frenzied. He approached me, and I could see this malevolent glint in his eyes. I pleaded with him, begging to be let go, but it was like he didn't hear me. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding, as he lunged towards me. I managed to dodge him, running towards the back of the workshop, hoping to find something, anything to defend myself. But the back was a dead end, and I was cornered. The old man stood between me and the only exit. His eyes bore into mine, and I could sense this malevolence emanating from him. I braced myself for whatever was to come, my mind racing, trying to find a way out. Then, suddenly, the door creaked open, and I bolted out, not looking back until I was a safe distance away. I sprinted back to my car, adrenaline pumping, and managed to start it. I sped away, leaving that workshop behind, a place that held an inexplicable terror. The fear and unease lingered long after, a chilling encounter etched into my memory. I was on a road trip with a couple of friends, taking a scenic route through the countryside. We were enjoying the drive, laughing, and listening to music. Then we saw it, a road sign that seemed off. It pointed to a shortcut, promising to save us time. We debated for a bit, but decided to take the route. After all, who doesn't love a good shortcut? The road started off fine, but as we drove deeper, things changed. The surroundings turned desolate, barren, like we'd stepped into an abandoned world. Unease settled in as we passed empty houses, boarded-up windows, and rusted-out cars. It felt like we'd stumbled into a forgotten place. I started to regret our decision, but turning back seemed like an even worse idea. We saw a gas station up ahead, a flickering light barely visible. Relieved, we pulled in, hoping to get directions back to the main road. The place was run down, dust-covered shelves, flickering lights, and an unsettling silence. We spotted a figure behind the counter, an old man, staring at us with vacant eyes. We approached cautiously, asking for directions, but he didn't respond, just kept staring. His gaze was chilling, unsettling. There was something off about the atmosphere, this lingering feeling of dread that seemed to hang in the air. We decided to leave, but as we turned, the old man spoke, his voice raspy and distant. He warned us about the road ahead, telling us to turn back, but his words were cryptic, almost nonsensical. We thanked him and left, shaken by the encounter. Back in the car, the atmosphere felt tense, a thick silence hanging over us. The road ahead was pitch black, no other cars in sight. We tried to lighten the mood with jokes, but there was this underlying tension, this feeling of being watched. Then, the car started acting up, sputtering and jerking. Panic set in as we realized we were stuck in the middle of nowhere, with no help in sight. We tried calling for help, but there was no signal, just dead silence on our phones. It was getting late, and the darkness seemed to swallow us whole. We decided to walk back to the gas station for help. The air was heavy, an oppressive silence engulfing us. As we approached the gas station, everything felt different. The lights were out, and there was no sign of the old man. The place looked deserted, abandoned, like it had been for years. We felt this growing sense of unease, this feeling that something wasn't right. We were about to turn back when we heard it, faint whispers, barely audible, but chilling. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. We looked around, but there was no one there. Fear started to grip us, our hearts pounding in our chests. Then, a sudden gust of wind, but it carried a sinister whisper, words we couldn't understand, echoing through the night. We bolted back to the car, panic taking over. The whispers seemed to follow us, growing louder and more menacing. We tried to start the car, but it wouldn't budge. It was like the world had turned against us. The whispers became more intense, almost deafening. We felt this overwhelming terror, this feeling of being surrounded by something sinister, something malevolent. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The silence was suffocating, deafening. We looked at each other, breathless, our hearts racing. After what felt like an eternity, the car started. We didn't waste a second and sped away, leaving that forsaken place behind. The road led us back to familiar surroundings, and the tension in the car started to ease. We didn't speak about what happened, but the memory lingered, haunting us. It was an encounter that left us shaken, a nightmarish experience etched into our minds, a chilling warning about roads that promise shortcuts but lead to places better left unexplored. I was on a long drive, and after hours of being on the road, I decided to take a break. I pulled over at a roadside vendor, a small, run-down stall that seemed out of place. The sign said curiosities and oddities. Intrigued, I approached the stall. The vendor was an elderly man, his face weathered with lines that spoke of years of experience. He had this mysterious aura about him, a kind of intensity in his eyes that made me uneasy. As I browsed through his items, I noticed they were unlike anything I'd seen before. Strange trinkets, ancient-looking artifacts, and odd contraptions lined the shelves. Each item had a story, he said, a backstory that made them unique. One item, a small figurine, caught my eye. The vendor explained its history, how it was supposedly a cursed relic with the power to bring misfortune to those who possessed it. It sounded absurd, but something about his conviction gave me pause. He offered it to me at a bargain, but I hesitated. The whole situation felt off, like there was an undercurrent of something sinister beneath the surface. I politely declined, trying to brush off the discomfort I felt. But as I turned to leave, he whispered something in a language I didn't understand. It sent a shiver down my spine, a feeling of unease that I couldn't shake off. I left the stall, feeling a sense of relief, but that feeling of unease lingered. As I resumed my journey, I noticed a subtle change in the atmosphere. It was like the air had become heavier, charged with an inexplicable tension. I dismissed it as my imagination, trying to focus on the road ahead. But then, strange things started happening. My car radio started malfunctioning, emitting static and bizarre noises that made my skin crawl. The figurine, the one I had considered buying, flashed in my mind. Was it just a coincidence, or was there something to the vendor's warnings? I pulled over to check the car, but everything seemed fine. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread, but it lingered, this inexplicable sense of impending doom. As I continued driving, things got worse. The skies darkened, the weather turning tumultuous. It was like the very elements were conspiring against me. I noticed odd occurrences on the road, strange shadows darting in and out of view, figures that vanished when I looked closer. It was like the world around me was distorted, surreal, and eerie. I tried to keep my composure, to rationalize the situation, but fear crept in. It felt like I was being watched, followed by an unseen presence. The radio continued its erratic behavior, emitting whispers that sounded like voices from another realm. I felt this overwhelming sense of dread, this feeling that I was spiraling into something beyond my control. I contemplated going back to the vendor, returning the cursed figurine, but a part of me was terrified of what might happen if I did. I was consumed by fear, by this inexplicable force that seemed to have gripped me since encountering that roadside stall. My mind raced, trying to find an explanation, a way to break free from this nightmare. I eventually pulled over again, unable to handle the mounting terror. I sat there, trapped in my own thoughts, feeling the weight of an unknown malevolence pressing down on me. I don't know how much time passed, but suddenly, everything stopped. The radio went silent, the atmosphere eased, and the shadows disappeared. Shaken and drained, I drove on, trying to put the unsettling events behind me. I was driving along when I saw someone standing by the side of the road. They looked stranded, their thumbs sticking out in that universal hitchhiking sign. I hesitated, but something about their desperate look made me pull over. The person, a woman in her late 20s, seemed distressed, claiming her car had broken down a few miles back. She looked harmless enough, so I offered her a ride. As she got in, she was polite, thankful for the help. We exchanged pleasantries, and she seemed normal enough at first. But as we drove, things started feeling off. She became increasingly nervous, fidgety almost. I tried to make conversation, but she was evasive, avoiding any personal questions. Then she mentioned needing to make a stop at a remote location, claiming she'd forgotten something important at her car. It sounded odd, but I agreed. As we got closer, her demeanor changed, her nervousness turning into an unsettling calmness. We reached the spot, and it was desolate, eerily quiet. She asked me to wait while she retrieved her things. I felt uneasy, but stayed in the car. Minutes passed, turning into an uncomfortably long wait. I stepped out, calling out to her, but there was no response. I couldn't shake this growing sense of dread, like something wasn't right. Just as I was about to leave, I heard a noise behind me. She emerged from the shadows, holding something in her hand, a sharp object glinting in the faint light. My heart raced as I realized she wasn't alone. Two men emerged from the darkness, their faces hidden beneath hoods. I tried to retreat, but they were fast, surrounding me. Panic surged as I realized I was in trouble. The woman's demeanor had shifted completely. There was a sinister glint in her eyes. They demanded my belongings, their voices cold and threatening. Fear gripped me, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I didn't know what they were capable of, but it was clear they had no good intentions. I tried reasoning, pleading, but they weren't interested. Their intentions were crystal clear. They wanted more than just my possessions. I was in a dangerous situation, stranded in the middle of nowhere, with these strangers who were now intent on harm. I scrambled back to my car, but one of them blocked my path. I was trapped, surrounded, and helpless. Desperation consumed me as I searched for an escape route, but there was none. In that moment, instincts kicked in. I bolted, running as fast as I could, heart pounding, fueled by sheer terror. I heard their footsteps behind me, but fear gave me wings. I sprinted towards the highway, hoping for a passing car, praying for salvation. The sound of my pursuers faded, but I didn't stop, running until I saw headlights in the distance. I flagged down a passing car, breathless, explaining what had happened. They called the authorities, and after what felt like an eternity, help arrived. The police searched the area, but found no trace of the attackers. I was shaken, my nerves on edge, but relieved to be safe. The encounter haunted me, a reminder of the dangers lurking in the kindness of strangers. It was a chilling experience, a lesson learned the hard way. I shuddered at the thought of what could have happened and vowed never to be so trusting again. I had this thing with photography, you know? I love to capture moments, the kind that made you stop and think. One day, I decided to take a road trip, seeking inspiration for my next project. I was drawn to this remote stretch of highway. Something about it just felt right. As I snapped pictures, I noticed something odd. Each photo I took seemed a bit off. At first, I thought it was my camera acting up, but it wasn't. It was the images themselves. There was this underlying sense of unease in every frame. The more I photographed, the clearer it became. The roadside held secrets, things that the naked eye couldn't see but the camera could capture. Shadows in the corner, subtle distortions, a sense of foreboding, things that made me shiver. I tried to rationalize it, blaming it on lighting or angles. But the feeling in my gut said otherwise. Each photo revealed more, a dark truth hidden in plain sight. It felt like I was unveiling something I shouldn't be seeing. As the day turned into night, I decided to call it quits. But even as I packed up, that sense of unease lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was leaving something behind, something important. That night, I couldn't sleep. The images haunted me, the unease growing stronger. I couldn't resist the pull to go back and take more photos. It was like an obsession, this need to uncover the truth. The next morning, I returned to the same spot. As I clicked away, the unease intensified. The photos were becoming more disturbing, as if they held a secret message only visible through the lens. I noticed a pattern, a recurring shape in the background of every picture. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a silhouette, blurry yet unmistakable. I couldn't place what it was, but it felt ominous. Then, I heard it. A faint whisper, barely audible, like a distant echo. I froze, scanning the area, but there was no one around. Fear gripped me, and I snapped a few more pictures in a hurry, wanting to leave. As I reviewed the photos, my blood ran cold. The shape in the background, it wasn't just a shape. It was a figure, a dark silhouette, almost human-like. It was in every picture, lurking in the shadows. I felt this overwhelming urge to get out of there, to flee. But before I could, a chill ran down my spine. The whisper was back, closer this time, almost beside me. I turned, but there was nothing there. My heart raced, adrenaline surged. I grabbed my things, scrambling to leave. But as I drove away, I glanced at the photos once more. In the last frame, the figure wasn't in the background, it was right behind me, its presence chillingly close. I sped off, heart pounding, panic gripping me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd captured something malevolent, something that shouldn't exist. I couldn't bring myself to look at the photos again. The unease lingered, a constant reminder of that encounter. I never went back to that stretch of highway, and I never touched my camera again. It was a nightmare, a series of unsettling images that had seared themselves into my mind. I knew what I had captured was real, something dark and chilling that had just beyond our sight. And I prayed that whatever it was, it stayed far away. I remember that day vividly. It was a long drive ahead, and I needed a break. I pulled into this rest area along the highway. It seemed normal, nothing out of the ordinary. Families picnicking, travelers stretching their legs. Just your typical rest stop. I parked, got out, took a deep breath of fresh air. It felt good to stretch after hours behind the wheel. As I walked around, I noticed a group of people, a family maybe, enjoying a picnic nearby. They seemed happy, carefree. I wandered a bit, exploring the area. That's when I noticed something odd, a child's toy abandoned near a bench. It was a red ball, worn out, like it had been there a while. Strange, I thought, but I figured a kid had just forgotten it. Then, as I moved further, I saw more things, a pair of sunglasses lying on a table, a backpack tucked under a tree. All left behind, as if the owners had just vanished. It didn't make sense. The unease started creeping in. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I saw a couple of people looking around, as if searching for something or someone. It was unsettling. I decided to use the restroom before leaving. But when I walked in, it was empty. No one. That's when it hit me, a strange quietness hung in the air, an eerie stillness that shouldn't have been there. I hurried back outside, my heart pounding. I scanned the area, searching for any signs of life. But it was as if everyone I had seen earlier had disappeared into thin air. Panic started to rise within me. I noticed a map near the restrooms, one of those markers showing all the rest areas on the highway. That's when it hit me, every pin on the map, every rest stop had a red circle around it. A chill ran down my spine. I started to put the pieces together, the abandoned belongings, the strange quietness, the marked map. It was like a puzzle, one that was leading to something terrifying. I couldn't ignore it. I approached a couple nearby, trying to remain calm. I asked if they had seen anything unusual, anyone acting strange. They looked at me puzzled, shook their heads. It was as if they hadn't noticed a thing. I decided to get out of there, but as I walked back to my car, a sense of dread settled in. That's when I saw it, a small trail of footprints leading off into the woods nearby. It was subtle, easy to miss. Curiosity got the better of me. I followed the footprints cautiously, my heart racing. The woods were dense, the sunlight barely filtering through the trees. It felt like I was stepping into the unknown. The footprints led deeper, further away from the rest area. My instincts told me to turn back, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that I needed to find out what was happening. I walked for what felt like forever, the sound of my footsteps the only thing breaking the silence. Then, I froze. I saw something, a small clearing ahead. And there, in the middle, was a circle of red stones, arranged meticulously. My breath caught in my throat. I knew I had stumbled onto something disturbing. There was a piece of paper placed in the center of the circle. I approached cautiously, heart pounding in my chest. I picked up the paper, hands trembling. It was a list of names, dates, and locations, all matched with the rest areas on the map, all with a red circle around them. It was a list of the missing, the ones who vanished. Fear gripped me. I wanted to run, to get out of there as fast as I could. But then, I heard something, a whisper, barely audible, but it was there. I spun around, scanning the woods. There was no one, just an unnerving silence. I bolted back, following my own footsteps, praying to get out of there. As I reached the rest area, I saw people, families, travelers, just like before. But something had changed. They looked different, distant, almost like they were lost. I rushed to my car, fumbling with the keys. As I sped away, I glanced back at the rest area in my rearview mirror. That feeling of dread lingered, the mystery of the disappearances haunting me. I knew I had stumbled onto something horrifying, something beyond comprehension. And as I drove away, I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to those who vanished. And would I be next? I found myself on a road trip with a couple of friends. We were cruising down the winding roads, enjoying the sights, when we stumbled upon this roadside market. It looked quaint at first glance, colorful stalls, vendors selling fruits, handmade crafts. Seemed like a charming spot to stretch our legs. As we approached, the atmosphere shifted. There was an odd energy lingering in the air, almost palpable. The market was bustling with people, yet there was a strange silence, an undercurrent of tension. We browsed the stalls, but something about the items for sale felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. The vendors were friendly enough, but their smiles didn't reach their eyes. There was one particular stall that caught our attention, a display of peculiar-looking trinkets, each with a tag bearing cryptic descriptions. The items were ordinary yet carried an inexplicable weight, as if they held a story of their own. As we examined the objects, a local approached us, an elderly woman with a weathered face. She began to tell us about the legends tied to these items, stories of tragedy, curses, and mysterious occurrences that plagued the town. At first, I dismissed it as local folklore, something to add a bit of flavor to the trip. But the way she spoke, with such intensity, made my skin prickle. She warned us, urged us to leave before sunset, before the market closed. We laughed it off, thinking she was weaving tales to entertain tourists. But as the day wore on, the atmosphere shifted further. People's conversations grew hushed, wary glances exchanged between the locals. It was like a storm brewing, unseen yet palpable. As the sun began to dip, the market took on a different vibe. The vendors started packing up with an urgency that sent a shiver down my spine. It was as if they were running from something unseen but deeply felt. We decided to linger, caught between curiosity and a gnawing sense of unease. That's when things got stranger. The sky darkened rapidly, an unnatural heaviness settling over the market. A chill wind blew through, carrying whispers, distant murmurs that sent a shudder down my spine. I glanced around, noticing the vendors hurrying, casting nervous glances at the horizon. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared, a heavy silence descended. The market was deserted, the stalls empty, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. That's when I noticed it, the trinkets we had examined earlier, now sitting ominously on the stalls, glowing faintly in the moonlight. They seemed different, charged with an eerie energy that made my heart race. My friends and I exchanged nervous glances, a silent understanding passing between us. We needed to leave, fast. But as we turned to go, we heard a sound, a low, guttural chanting coming from the shadows. I felt a knot form in my stomach as the whispers grew louder, more urgent. The air crackled with a strange electricity, a feeling of impending doom. We picked up our pace, but it was as if the market had shifted, the stalls rearranging themselves, pathways closing in on us. Panic surged within us as we realized we were lost in this maze of darkness. The chanting grew louder, the shadows twisting, taking form. Figures emerged from the darkness, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. They moved closer, surrounding us, their chant reaching a crescendo. Fear clawed at my chest, adrenaline pumping through my veins. We broke into a run, blindly navigating through the labyrinth of stalls, trying to find an exit. But the market seemed to have a life of its own, trapping us within its sinister grip. We stumbled, tripped over unseen obstacles, our hearts pounding in our chests. The figures were closing in, their chants growing more menacing. Just when it felt like all hope was lost, we glimpsed a faint light ahead. We ran towards it, fueled by sheer desperation. As we burst through the exit, gasping for breath, we found ourselves back on the road, the market gone without a trace. We didn't look back, didn't dare to. We jumped into the car, speeding away from that nightmarish place. The eerie silence that followed us felt deafening. We never spoke about it again. That night etched into our minds as a haunting, inexplicable experience. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I still hear those whispers, the echoes of that chilling market, a reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of the world. I was on a road trip with a couple of friends when we came across this remote stretch of road, the kind that makes you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. As we rounded a bend, we spotted something peculiar, a roadside shrine. It was a small structure made of stone, covered in various offerings, flowers, coins, even some personal items. It felt out of place, eerie in its solitude. Curiosity got the better of us, so we pulled over to take a closer look. As we approached, a feeling of unease settled in. There was a strange vibe around the shrine, an inexplicable sense of foreboding that sent a shiver down my spine. The offerings seemed almost ritualistic. Some were fresh, others looked like they'd been there for ages, weathered and worn. There were faded ribbons tied to the shrine, twisted in strange patterns. We exchanged puzzled glances, trying to make sense of it. It felt like we'd stumbled upon something we weren't meant to see. But the strangeness of it all compelled us to investigate further. That's when we noticed it, a faint sound, like whispers carried by the wind. It sent a chill down my spine. The air around the shrine seemed charged, almost as if it held some sort of energy. As we lingered, the whispers grew louder, forming eerie chants that made my skin crawl. It felt like the very air was vibrating with some kind of malevolence, an unseen force that seemed to tug at us. We spotted movement from the corner of our eyes, figures darting behind the trees, their presence felt but not seen clearly. It was unnerving, like we were being watched by something otherworldly. A sense of dread settled upon us, a feeling that we had stumbled into something far darker than we could comprehend. The shrine, once intriguing, now felt like a warning, urging us to leave. But as we turned to go, the atmosphere shifted. The sky darkened suddenly, the air growing thick and heavy. It felt like a storm was brewing, but the sky was clear. The whispers transformed into a haunting melody, echoing through the trees. It was mesmerizing yet chilling, as if calling us deeper into the woods. Fear knotted in my stomach. My friends and I exchanged panicked glances, the unease growing with every passing moment. It was like we crossed into a realm beyond our understanding. The atmosphere was charged with an inexplicable tension. We stumbled back to our car, the shrine's presence haunting us, feeling as though it followed us, tendrils of darkness stretching out from the woods. As we drove away, the feeling of unease lingered. It was as if the shrine had left a mark on us, an invisible stain that we couldn't shake off. We didn't speak much after that, each lost in our own thoughts, trying to make sense of the inexplicable encounter. To this day, I can't explain what we witnessed. It felt like we had brushed against something ancient, something that existed beyond our reality. It was a chilling reminder that there are mysteries in this world, hidden in plain sight, that we might never comprehend. I was driving along this road, nothing much around except the occasional trees and a whole lot of empty space. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. Then, I noticed something strange: surveillance cameras, all along the road, almost hidden among the trees. Curiosity got the better of me, so I pulled over. I couldn't help but wonder what on earth these cameras were doing out here in the middle of nowhere. As I looked closer, I saw they were fixed to trees, poles, even disguised as rocks. It was like someone was watching this place, monitoring every move. I tried to make sense of it, but the more I looked, the more nervous I got. It was eerie, unsettling, like stumbling upon something you weren't supposed to see. Then, as I followed the trail of cameras, I saw a building tucked away behind the trees, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. It was nondescript, no signs or anything, just a structure that felt out of place. I cautiously approached, my heart pounding in my chest. The windows were covered, but I could sense there was activity inside. I couldn't shake this feeling that something was off. I heard voices, a hushed conversation from inside. It was the kind of conversation you hear when someone doesn't want to be overheard. I hesitated, unsure whether I should investigate further or get the heck out of there. Against my better judgment, I crept closer to the building. That's when I saw it, a sign that read private property. No trespassing. It sent a chill down my spine. I was intruding, but something told me this was way more than just private property. As I edged closer, I noticed something odd about the area. It was too quiet, almost unnaturally so. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. I was about to turn and leave when I heard a noise, a faint rustling. I spun around to see a figure emerge from the woods, moving swiftly toward the building. They seemed on edge, glancing around as if they were being followed. It was unnerving. I didn't want to get caught snooping around, but I couldn't shake this feeling that I needed to find out what was going on. I took a few more cautious steps, trying to catch a glimpse through the windows. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. It was someone, maybe more than one person, coming my way. Adrenaline surged through me, and I bolted. I didn't look back, just sprinted for my car. I could hear them behind me, closing in. I jumped in, started the engine, and floored it out of there. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. I saw shadows moving around the building, figures that made my blood run cold. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stumbled upon something dangerous, something way beyond my understanding. I drove for what felt like hours, heart racing, hands trembling on the wheel. I kept looking back, expecting to see those figures following me, but there was nothing. When I finally reached a gas station, I pulled over. I sat there, trying to make sense of what just happened. The fear, the adrenaline, it was like something out of a nightmare. I called the authorities, reported what I'd seen, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stumbled onto something way bigger, something that wasn't meant for my eyes. To this day, I don't know what was happening at that place. All I know is it felt wrong, dangerous. Those cameras, that building, it was a glimpse into something clandestine, something that made me never want to go back there again. I was driving down this road I'd taken 100 times before. Nothing special about it, just another long stretch of highway. But this time, things took a turn. I saw commotion up ahead, flashing lights, and cars stopped dead in their tracks. It looked like a traffic jam, but more intense. I slowed down, trying to see what was going on. That's when I saw it, police cars, officers crouched behind them, guns drawn. I thought, What on earth is happening? Then I noticed a guy, dressed in black, holding someone hostage. He was standing by a car, pointing a gun at this poor soul. My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't just drive past. I had to do something, but I was frozen in fear. People were getting out of their cars, trying to see what was going on. But it wasn't just curiosity, they were drawn in, like moths to a flame. I don't know if it was the danger or the chance to help, but nobody wanted to leave. I watched as the situation escalated. The hostage taker was yelling, his voice echoing across the road. It was chaos, and I felt so helpless. All I could think was, what if he starts shooting? The tension was unbearable. I could hear people whispering, panicking, not knowing what to do. I was terrified, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The police were trying to negotiate, but it felt like time was standing still. The guy, the hostage, the cops, it was like a movie scene, but all too real. I wished I could just close my eyes and make it all go away. Then, a shot rang out, a warning shot from the police. I remember the panic that spread like wildfire. People were ducking, screaming, trying to find cover. I was crouched behind my car, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. I peeked over the hood of my car and saw the hostage taker waving the gun around, shouting threats. It was surreal, like I was living in someone else's nightmare. The police were trying to defuse the situation, but it felt like everything was slipping out of control. I felt this heavy weight in my chest, this sinking realization that anything could happen. Suddenly, another shot echoed through the air. I didn't know where it came from, but it was enough to make everyone freeze. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. More shots followed, and chaos erupted. People were screaming, running for cover, trying to find safety. I was shaking, trying to make myself as small as possible behind my car, praying that I wouldn't get hit. The police were firing back now, trying to stop the hostage taker. It was like a war zone, sirens blaring, gunshots echoing, people yelling. I felt like I was going to pass out. The fear was suffocating. Then, it was over, sudden silence. The hostage taker was down, and the hostage was safe. But the aftermath was haunting. There were injured people, shattered glass, and this eerie quiet that settled over everything. I sat there, still trembling, trying to process what had just happened. It was too much, too real. The fear lingered, like a shadow that wouldn't go away. That moment on the road, it changed something in me. It was a reminder of how fragile life is and how quickly everything can spiral out of control. It's a memory I can't shake, a reminder of how close I came to something I never want to experience again. I was driving on this old road, not too far from town, when I noticed something odd. There was this guy standing by the side, wearing some homemade costume or something. He had a bandana over his face, dark clothes, and this determined look like he owned the place. At first, I thought maybe he was in some kind of trouble, so I slowed down. But then he started waving at me, signaling to stop. That's when I felt this shiver run down my spine. I mean, who stands by the side of the road dressed like that? It was like he was waiting for someone, or something, to come along. I decided to keep driving, but he didn't like that. He pulled out something from his pocket, a homemade sign with weird symbols on it. I didn't get a good look, but it was enough to freak me out. I just stepped on the gas and drove past him, but I couldn't shake off that uneasy feeling. As I continued down the road, I saw another person on the side, dressed similarly. I thought maybe it was some sort of protest or local event, but then I noticed they were signaling me to stop too. I didn't want any part of it, so I just kept driving. But then I saw more of them. They were lurking in the shadows by the road, watching every car that passed by. I could see something glinting in their hands, like weapons or tools. My heart started racing. What kind of messed up situation was this? I couldn't just turn around. There was no way I was driving back through that. I had to keep going, hoping to reach a more populated area, find help. But the further I went, the more of these people I saw. It was like they were on some mission, and I was caught in the middle of it. I started to feel like they were following me, keeping pace with my car. I'd see them in the rearview mirror, just lingering on the edges of the road. I tried to shake them off, taking turns, speeding up, but they were persistent. I felt this fear creeping up, this sense of being hunted. I had no idea what they wanted, but it sure as hell wasn't anything good. My mind was racing, trying to think of what I could do, but I was just a regular person caught in this bizarre situation. As I approached a curve, I saw a bunch of them blocking the road. They were standing there, blocking the way, holding weapons. I hit the brakes hard, swerving to avoid them. I didn't know what they were capable of, but I sure as hell didn't want to find out. I managed to navigate around them, but they were relentless. They started chasing my car, running after me like some twisted horror movie. I was panicking, trying to think of any way out of this nightmare. I saw a gas station up ahead and decided to make a run for it. I swerved into the station, my heart pounding in my chest. I rushed out of the car, trying to alert the people there. They must have seen the terror on my face because they hurried to lock the doors. I tried to explain what was happening, but they just looked at me like I was crazy. I watched through the window as those people surrounded my car, inspecting it like they were looking for something. I felt this sickening dread. They weren't giving up. I didn't know what to do. I was trapped in that gas station, surrounded by those people outside. I felt like a sitting duck, waiting for something terrible to happen. I was desperate, trying to think of anyone I could call for help, but I was in the middle of nowhere. I waited, praying for them to leave, but they just lingered outside. It was like they were waiting for me to make a move. Every shadow outside the window made my heart jump, thinking they were coming in. The whole situation was surreal, like I was stuck in some twisted game. Hours passed, and they finally dispersed. I cautiously stepped out, looking around, making sure they were really gone. I felt this overwhelming relief, but also this lingering fear that they might come back. I got back in my car, hands shaking as I drove away from that gas station. I didn't stop until I reached the nearest town. I felt paranoid, like they were still following me, watching me. It took me a long time to shake that feeling. To this day, I still don't know who those people were or what they wanted. But that night, that sense of being hunted, it's something I can't forget. It was a living nightmare, and I hope I never have to experience anything like it again. It was a typical night, working for the recovery company. I got a call about a broken down vehicle stranded on a desolate stretch of road. Sounded like a regular job, nothing out of the ordinary. I grabbed my tools and headed out, driving through the darkness towards the remote location. The road was eerily quiet, just the hum of my truck's engine and the occasional sound of crickets in the distance. I reached the spot, and there it was, a car parked on the side, its hazard lights blinking weakly in the darkness. I pulled up behind it, the headlights illuminating the empty road ahead. As I stepped out, I could feel the chill in the air. It was unsettling, but I shrugged it off, attributing it to the late hour and the remote location. I approached the car, and that's when I saw a woman standing by the driver's side, looking disheveled and distressed. I introduced myself, told her I was there to help. She seemed relieved, thanking me profusely. She explained how her car suddenly stalled, leaving her stranded in the middle of nowhere. She was visibly shaken, so I assured her that I'd take a look at her car. I popped the hood and checked the engine, but everything seemed fine, no visible issues. I asked her to try starting the car, and it miraculously came back to life. She was thrilled, thanking me again and again. But then, as I was getting ready to leave, she started acting strange. Her demeanor changed, and she had this unsettling grin on her face. It sent a shiver down my spine. I remember feeling this sudden wave of unease, like something was seriously wrong. I tried to step back, but she lunged at me, faster than I could react. She grabbed hold of my arm with an unnerving strength, her nails digging into my skin. I could see her eyes, wide and almost vacant, as if there was no humanity left in them. I struggled to break free, but she was surprisingly strong. I managed to push her away and sprinted back to my truck, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't look back, I just sped away, not stopping until I was miles away from that spot. I couldn't shake off that encounter. It haunted me, the way she changed so suddenly. It was like encountering something beyond explanation, something that went against all logic and reason. I didn't know what she was or what she wanted, but I knew I had to get away from her. I reported the incident to the authorities, but they couldn't find any trace of the woman or the broken-down car. It was like she vanished into thin air. I tried to go about my work as usual, but that encounter lingered in my mind, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places. Since that night, I always felt a sense of dread whenever I had to respond to a call in a remote area, that fear of encountering something I couldn't explain. It changed me, made me more cautious, more aware of the unseen dangers lurking out there. I've heard stories from others in the recovery business, whispers of similar encounters in the dead of night. People encountering strangers on the roadside, people who didn't seem quite right, people who sent a chill down your spine. I try not to dwell on it, but that memory still lingers, a reminder that there are things out there beyond our understanding. It was a bright, sunny day, just like any other, and I was out by the roadside selling fresh produce from the farm. I had apples lined up neatly on the stand, and cars passed by every now and then. Most customers were regulars, but there was this one couple that caught my eye, a man and a woman who pulled up in an old, beat-up car. They seemed off from the start, different from the usual customers. The man wore a long coat despite the warm weather, and the woman's eyes had this distant look, like she was lost in some other world. They approached the stand, asking about the apples, but their questions felt odd, almost intrusive. As I went about explaining the different varieties of apples, I noticed their behavior getting weirder. They were too intense, too focused on the details, as if they were studying each apple for something other than taste. It was unsettling, but I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe they were just peculiar customers. Then, as I turned to get more apples from the crate behind me, I heard the woman whispering something to the man, words I couldn't quite catch. When I turned back, they both had this strange grin on their faces, sending a chill down my spine. The man suddenly reached out, grabbing my arm with an iron grip, his fingers digging into my skin. His nails were sharp, almost claw-like, and the woman just stood there, watching with those eerie eyes. I tried to pull away, but his hold was surprisingly strong. He leaned in close, muttering something about needing more than just apples. It was nonsensical, but the way he said it made my blood run cold. I managed to break free and stumble back, my heart racing like never before. Without a second thought, I bolted from the stand, not daring to look back until I was far away. I didn't understand what had just happened. It was supposed to be a normal day, selling apples, but those two, they were unlike anyone I'd ever encountered before. Their presence, their eerie behavior, it was like they were from another world. I called the authorities, but when they arrived, the couple and their car were gone, vanished without a trace. It was as if they were never there in the first place. The officers didn't find any clues, and I couldn't shake off that encounter. From that day on, I felt this constant sense of unease whenever I was out at the roadside stand, I couldn't forget their faces, those haunting eyes that seemed to pierce through me. It made me wonder what their true intentions were, what they were looking for among those apples. I tried to go about my usual routine, selling produce and interacting with customers, but that encounter left an indelible mark on me. It made me wary, made me question the things lurking beneath the surface of everyday life. I heard whispers from others in the area, stories of odd encounters with strangers at roadside stands, people who seemed harmless but had this unnerving aura about them. It made me wonder if what I experienced was just the tip of something much darker. The night was dark, and the stars above were the only source of light as we set up our tent by the roadside. It was me and my girlfriend, exploring Europe on a budget, opting for camping whenever we could. The area seemed quiet, peaceful even, with occasional sounds of wildlife in the distance. We thought it was just another spot to spend the night, a simple resting place on our journey. But as the night deepened, things took a sinister turn. We were asleep in our tent when sudden noises jolted us awake. 3 figures loomed outside, their faces obscured by shadows. Panic surged through me, and I whispered urgently to my girlfriend, trying to make sense of the situation without alerting those outside. The men were talking amongst themselves in hushed tones, and the air felt heavy with danger. We dared not move, hardly daring to breathe, hoping they'd pass by without noticing us. But luck was not on our side that night. One of the men approached our tent, a flashlight in hand, sweeping its beam over the fabric. My heart pounded in my chest. I felt every heartbeat reverberating through my body. We stayed motionless, hoping against hope that they'd think the tent was empty. But they weren't fooled. With no warning, the tent was ripped open, flooding our sanctuary with harsh light. Their faces were grim, almost predatory, as they demanded money and valuables. Fear clenched my stomach, and I fumbled to find our belongings, trying to comply without provoking them further. The situation escalated quickly. One of the men grew impatient, reaching in and grabbing our bags forcefully. My girlfriend let out a gasp of shock, and I knew I had to do something. But what could I, an ordinary traveler, do against 3 assailants? I tried to reason with them, but their eyes held no empathy, no remorse. They were desperate, driven by a different kind of survival instinct. I felt utterly helpless, trapped in a nightmare with no way out. They took what they wanted and left, disappearing into the night as quickly as they had come. Shaken and trembling, we sat there for what felt like an eternity. The sense of violation lingered in the air, a chilling reminder of how vulnerable we were, how easily our sense of safety could be shattered. We packed up in silence, adrenaline still coursing through our veins. Every rustle in the bushes made us jump, every passing car headlight sent shivers down our spines. The trust we held in the world was shattered that night, replaced by a constant, gnawing fear. We didn't speak much as we continued our journey the next day. The encounter haunted us, leaving scars that ran deeper than the surface. It was a brutal reminder of the darkness that could lurk in the most unexpected places, a reminder that safety is never guaranteed, even in the most serene settings. As we moved forward, the image of those faces, distorted by the shadows, remained etched in our minds. The nights felt colder, the sense of security we once had now a distant memory. We were just 2 backpackers, trying to make sense of a world that could turn terrifying in the blink of an eye.